Will this show redeem itself for me? Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with Season 2, Episode 7 of Invincible. And yeah, in recent episodes, I've been not too fond with how certain plot points have been handled. And just this season in general, like especially with the stuff with I'm trying to think of his name. See, I can't even remember his name because I'm me, if I'm being honest, but also because he's like barely shown. Sterling K. Brown's character, I can't think of it. He's set up at the beginning of this season to be the main villain of the season, and then he's just not. And even if that's what they're going for, even if that was the idea, like, oh, we're going to set up this character to be like this big deal, and then he's just not this big deal, it's like, you didn't even do that right. Because the problem is, if you're going to do that, you have to give him more build-up. You have to, like, give him a lot more build-up, a lot more screen time, and then in the end, he's nothing. In the end, he's not this big threat or this big deal. That's how you do that. But you still have to have all the build-up. Because otherwise, the joke, the idea of it just doesn't land. It doesn't work if he's just some nobody random character, basically. And that's what he comes across as. Like, honestly, you can name like any villain or antagonist from this series, and they honestly have more relevance to anything than he does. They're a lot more important, and in a lot of cases have more screen time. I think in like that one episode in season 1 where Mark and the Guardians, I think they were still the team back then, when they were beaten up by like Battle Beast and everything, I think he had more screen time in that one episode than Sterling K. Brown's characters had in this entire season. Which is ridiculous, by the way. But I mean, I guess it is what it is at this point. It's really disappointing because I was so excited for that. I was so invested in that after episode 1. Like, they set that up to be such a great storyline and just ignore it. And I'm fine with them, like, focusing on other stuff as well. Because like I've said before, season 1 focused on a lot of different things at once, and there were so many storylines. Mind you, I feel like even in season 1, there were a few too many storylines. They really don't need to do as much as they're doing. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I could live with it, because season 1 at least handled it well. But here, it's just like, it feels a lot more haphazard, for lack of a better word. Feels like they're not putting as much effort into making it, like, connect well. It feels like they're just throwing in a bunch of different storylines just to have them. Because it's like, oh, we set this up in season 1, well, we have to have the payoff for this now. Even though it really doesn't make a lot of sense to have the payoff for that now. Like, the entire stuff with the Lizard League or whatever, and the Martian stuff going on at the same time. Why did we need to address that right now? Why? That wasn't necessary. We could have waited on that. That wasn't we didn't need to get to that right away. And on top of that, we also we also um, took away time that we could have put towards more important stuff. Now, the Martian thing I might give you just because of the alien brain things wanting to come and invade Earth and everything, but it still feels like it wasn't well thought out. And then there's other plot lines like I've showed or I've talked about that have I feel should have been waited on, such as the stuff with the Viltrumites. I think that was forced in way too soon. Alan and the coalition or whatever they're called does not should not have been introduced this early. It feels like they're rushing through things. And considering they're planning on having like what did they say, 8 seasons? It just feels weird that they're rushing through things. So I don't know like how much more content is left to like adapt or whatnot from the comics, but I just feel like this is like forcing too much at once. And if this is how it was from the comics, well, it should have been changed. I'm not one of those people who thinks that like we need to focus on comic accuracy. In fact, I think focusing on comic accuracy destroys comic book movies because comic accuracy doesn't always translate well to film, to movies, to shows, etc. That can go from anything like character design slash costume design that just looks like absolute shit in live action, such as with Guy Gardner in the upcoming Superman movie. He looks like absolute shit. It is a terrible design that does not work in live action. But it's comic accurate, so they're going with it. And it can be other things too, like just the way a character acts or their powers even might not translate super well to live action. And so you got to be really careful when adapting something. Even something like Miss Marvel's stretchy powers and everything, her ability to manipulate her body and stretch it and even reshape it and whatnot. Like, that would be very hard to do in live action. Not impossible, as the One Piece live action series did show us. It is possible to make that work, but you also have to take into consideration the context of the series. The way a superhero series is done would be very different from One Piece. So I honestly think that the way that the MCU changed her powers um, in the Miss Marvel series and the subsequent The Marvels film, I think it was smart. I think it was the right way to handle Kamala's abilities by making them functionally the same, but like look visibly different, basically having it be like physical power constructs rather than her actual body stretching and all. I think it works better. And that's the thing, it's a notable change. It completely changes what her power set is, but it makes it work in live action better than her actual powers would. It's a change that was necessary, and I was against it at first. But that's the thing, and this goes for animation too. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, but animation can get away with it better because it's not live action. Animation can do things that live action can't. Yes, it absolutely can. That's why you can have characters who are super stretchy and weird and have like strange power sets that wouldn't work as well in live action. But animation is still a different medium from a comic, and it requires different things. Certain things that work like in a static image in a comic will not work in motion. And you also have to take into account episode runtime and season length. Comics don't have to worry about shit like that. Like with comics, you just have the length of the comic, but that can be like a lot more like interchangeable. And you have a lot more freedom with that. Even though this is like a 45 to an hour long show, it's like it works differently in how it's presented and how it's perceived and how the pacing needs to go. And they are rushing this. This needed to be stretched out more. This needed to be given time to breathe because certain storylines, again, even if this is how it's done in the comics, needed to be separated more. And if it's done this way in the comics, then it's rushed in the comics too. The Viltrumite stuff should not be this early. It just shouldn't be. But yeah, it's like this kind of stuff is like I talked about last time how it's kind of turning me off a little bit from this series. And I was kind of like making the claim like, oh, I don't even know if I'm going to react to season 3 at this point. And it's because it's actively hurting my enjoyment of the series. It may not be a big deal to you. You may think my views on this are stupid, and that's fine. Believe it or not, I'm okay with you thinking my opinions here are dumb. Because it's all opinion. Because it's all subjective. This is based on my viewing experience, what I tend to like with shows, and how I tend to enjoy them. And I understand that's not going to be a universal experience for everyone. I understand that not everyone's going to have an issue with that. Or even believe it is an issue in the first place. But I do. And I'm just wanting to make it clear here that because I find it as an issue, it does affect my enjoyment. It does affect my ability to, want to watch the series. And if that doesn't affect yours, and if you don't think that's like a really reasonable complaint, and I think that's fine. You're allowed to think that. I'm glad that you can enjoy it with all this stuff. That's fine. But I'm just expressing my thoughts. I'm just expressing my thoughts that it does affect my entertainment with this show. And then you have other stuff that's bothering me too, like the fact that that Rex and Ray survived. They absolutely should have not survived. And and this is something I very strongly stand by, because their survival goes against the rules that this series set up for its world. It's not even just about could they have possibly survived that? Because yeah, people have survived being shot in the head. Absolutely. It's happened. People have survived crazy head injuries. Could Ray have survived whatever happened to her there? I guess, yeah, technically. But the fact is that those scenes were shot and depicted as deaths. Not as fake out deaths, but as deaths. We were told that they died pretty much. And then they just didn't. They just didn't. But from every visual and storytelling angle, we were told they did. And with the context of the scenes and everything, it honestly makes no sense for them to have survived. Because that scene was clearly set up to be that kind of harrowing death that would shake up the series, the characters, etc. Characters dying that would, actually affect things. And this series has made a point of being like, when characters die, they die, and anyone can die. Whether you think that these heroes are like tough enough to be able to withstand a lot of shit or not, it's like, as I mentioned last time, they're still people who still have the same weaknesses as anyone. The Viltrumites are shown to have the same weaknesses. The same things that would kill a human can absolutely kill a Viltrumite, and have been shown to do so. So why did these two suddenly have the ability to get through this kind of stuff? That makes no sense. The series set a standard that anyone except maybe Mark can die. And that these characters are not invincible. That's the point. Mark is the only one who really is invincible. He's the only one with plot armor. Anyone else is fair game. But when you visibly and notably depict two characters as having died, and then just take it back, it feels cheap. And I'm not even saying I wanted them to die. But it's like, you set up Rex with so many death flags, especially with him, like, you know, starting to change and having that entire conversation with Eve. Like, that was massive death flags everywhere. He was set up to die. And again, even if you want to say, like, oh, but that's the point. They're trying to... Invincible tries to do commentary, and it's trying to do a commentary on your expectations for what's happening in the show and everything. It's like, that's not how you do it. You're doing it wrong if that's what you're trying to do. You don't, like, give a character every death flag in the known universe and then just not do anything with that. Or, you know, do a fake out death. That's not how you do a fake out death. A fake out death usually should come from nowhere. It should be sudden and random and, like, horrifying. It shouldn't be built up to. Again, I'm sorry, one, for these pre-thoughts being so long, but I'm sorry if you disagree. But I'm fine with you disagreeing. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. That's perfectly reasonable and allowed. But this is my perspective on things based on what the series has, you know, implied for me. What the series has presented itself as being. If a character is going to die, I want them to die, you know? I don't want them to come back. That feels cheap. It feels like you're being, like, dicked around with. Yeah, so I'm sorry I have this big rant and everything in the pre-thoughts here. Sorry for this lasting so long. I bet some of you have already skipped past this, and that's fine, but I needed to get all of this out. Because I talked about it last time, but I needed to like, really just let it out now. As well as to really make my feelings, like, even more clear towards it all. Because I know there were, like, one or two people or something in the comments last time who were, like, clearly not as bothered by this. And we're trying to, like, make, you know, debate about it. Thankfully, very reasonably, thank you for not being an asshole about it. But, yeah, it's just... It's something I can't just move past. So I wanted to mention that again here, especially since it's going to affect these next two episodes. These final two episodes of the season, like I said in the pre-thoughts, really need to kind of impress me. Or I said in the cold open, rather. They really need to, like, change my mind right now, because I'm really, like, not into it as much. And I want them to change my mind. I want these next 2 episodes to, you know, redeem things for me. To make me interested in continuing into season 3. Because this is like, for all the good that this show has, for all the like really wonderful things, I'm just really disappointed by the things that I perceive to be weaker. Because I feel like this show is better than this. And I really don't like ragging on the show. Because there's a lot I enjoy of it. So, I think right now we're just going to have to move on and probably start this, considering it's been over 20 minutes for these pre-thoughts. And hope for the best. We'll see how it goes, and I'll obviously give plenty of thoughts after, so let's get into it. Hold up just a second there. Before you click that link in the description below to go to today's reaction, I want to take the moment to remind you of all the awesome content we have on the channel. Between Monday and Friday, we have a plethora of awesome series reactions, with 2 every day except Thursday. We also have movie reactions every Saturday and Sunday. I do pre-record them during the week, but upload them on the weekend. And don't forget about all the awesome gaming content over on the Princessa Gaming channel. Every day of the week we have some awesome Let's Plays, we have streams, we have all kinds of great content. And please, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to like this video if you want to see more awesome content such as this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get to today's video. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. I feel like I should be... I honestly, I felt this way, but I feel like I should be taking notes, considering just how many goddamn storylines there are, how many plot points. Not to mention how many characters I have to remember, how many names I have to remember, which I'm always not great with in the first place. So let me get this out of the way first. I mentioned in the reaction, this didn't change with anything after that, that I think the best scene of this season so far was the one with, I'm trying to think of his name. Hold on. Let me go back to the voice credits here. I have it muted, so... Rick. Sorry, it's like, I'm bad with names as it is, but when there's so many characters, it's hard to keep track sometimes. The best scene in this season so far is the one with Rick. Prior to this, I would have said it was like at the beginning with like the alternate universe and the alternate Mark and Nolan and all. But now it's the one with Rick and Donald and all of that going down with the having to talk him down from the roof and all. And Donald empathizing with it, showing how he's been, you know, brought back as well. That scene was powerful, and yeah, I admit part of it is probably due to the fact that, yeah, I've been suicidal. Back in 2013, most notably, I was extremely suicidal. I attempted it multiple times. And never to, like, this massive point where I needed to be hospitalized after, and it was mostly, like... I'm not going to say small stuff, because it's definitely not small, and that's not a productive way to think about it. But it's like, I wasn't, like, stabbing myself aggressively or anything like that. It never got, like, to that point. I never, like, ran out into traffic. it's more along the lines of like I tried suffocating myself, was not able to go too far with it. You could say I kind of chickened out, which is a good thing, honestly. And stuff like that. Stuff that wouldn't like, I guess you could say, cause permanent harm to me if I failed. It's hard to talk about without it sounding like just crazy, you know. But the point is, like, because of my experiences, like I connect really hard when characters and scenes in shows, movies, games, etc. have stuff like this. One big example that I've always kind of gone with is from the first Life is Strange game with the character Kate. She has a scene like this on the roof as well, where you need to talk her off. And the thing, the big difference with that is it's a video game, and your choices are actually like important there to talking her off or whether she actually jumps or not. And it's like that gets you a lot more invested than just watching a show, to be fair. Because it's more of an active medium and your choices matter and what happens. With this, it's a show. It's like, what's going to happen happens. You can't change it. um, but it's like also just scenes like that in general tend to like, things that appeal to me. Appeal might be the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Things that connect with me emotionally tend to be scenes that I remember a lot more and scenes that like actually matter to me more. And so, and plus, this scene was so well voice acted and presented and everything. It just felt like it was. It felt like it had special attention given to it. I did also like the Comic Con stuff with like the references in the background and stuff, but also the little ribbing at the fans complaining about animation and showcasing like the different animation techniques all at once for how they get around budgets and all. I think that was really clever and funny. Um, and I really wasn't expecting it. The stuff with like Rex going out and continuing to try and be a hero and everything because he wants to feel useful and it's okay. I mean, Rex, I guess, continues to show he's grown. Like, he's a lot nicer to Mark now. But it's like, okay. The scene was, yeah, I wouldn't say pointless. It definitely wasn't pointless. But it just felt almost random. Like, this felt like a scene that belongs earlier on in a season. And I know, like, within the context of everything that happened, it wouldn't make sense to have it be earlier in the season because it needed to happen after the incident with the Lizard League. But I don't know. Maybe they could have pushed it to the beginning of season 3. It just feels like the penultimate episode of the season feels like a weird place to put a scene like that, just in terms of the context and writing of it. Maybe that's just me. And I promise, I want to make something very clear, by the way. I'm not just bitching about things in this show just to bitch about them. Like, I try my damnedest not to do shit like that. When I have a complaint about the show, it's a genuine complaint. I'm when I'm like upset at a writing decision or a character decision or something else like that, it's because I genuinely find issue with it. Sometimes it's a nitpick. This, I would say, is a smaller issue for sure. But it's just like, it felt weird to me. It really did. We also had Donald finding out like more information about all the times he's died and how much he's been brought back and everything. So there's that. um, which that led into the entire scene on the roof. So, um, we have like the entire thing throughout this episode of Mark and Amber. Let's talk about that. That's a big thing. Let's get into that. So this has been kind of a thing this entire season. Mark and Amber's relationship, and will it or won't it work? And the answer has now been given to us. And the answer is that it would work, it could work, but neither of them are allowing it to. Because Amber is rightly scared. She is terrified of what happened, and she also feels like she has no autonomy in this relationship because everything kind of revolves around him having to go off and do stuff, and then all the things that are now coming to him while they're supposed to be having, you know, a night to themselves. But it's also definitely her fear from, you know, how Anissa had gripped her neck like that. And Mark is still dealing with the aftermath of his father and all, and he's seen this relationship as just a repeat of his father and mother's relationship. And even though he's not lying, he believes that the way he's not quite with her enough is what his mother went through, and it kind of is to a point. And that he's just not going to end up being better. He feels like he's going to just be his father in this regard. And so they're very clearly breaking it off because of their own fears and feelings of inadequacy, if we're being honest. Like, Amber likes what he's doing as a hero. She likes that he's saving people and working to make things better. But she also feels neglected. And that's fair. I'm not saying that's not fair, but she also just feels inadequate because she's a normal human. Like, that's really what it comes down to. She's not tough, she's not strong, she can't handle that stuff. And when when Mark's going off doing his own thing, that's one thing. But when something comes and threatens her life, she can't handle that. It's too much for her. It makes her feel not only useless, but like she doesn't have any control over her own life and say in the matter. And that's valid. But at the same time, this is one of those cases where the show has been literally written to reflect this. She feels like this because that's how the show was written. And my problem with that is it feels like it was written that way to facilitate this moment, basically. Like, they wanted to tell, like, this story of this relationship not working out simply because she's not a superhuman. Because they wanted to work up to, very clearly, Mark getting together with Eve. It's unquestionable that's where they're going with this. And they wanted to do that because Eve is also a superhero, and although she's going through, like, her own shit this season, she's superhuman. She can handle shit like this. She understands a lot more what that kind of thing is like. But it feels like Amber is a plot point when you do it this way, rather than an actual character. Like, her entire thing is about autonomy, and that was her entire argument here, about her own autonomy as a person, and how she felt like it was being taken away from her in this relationship, especially with what happened with Anissa. But the character has no autonomy. Because, I mean, not just because she's a character, a fictional character, but because, like, this entire relationship was built to fail from the start. And that's very clear now. Even though her and Mark have so much exceptional chemistry, and Mark has pretty much none with Eve, they built this relationship to fail as a early romance kind of thing for Mark to go through so that he could eventually get together with Eve and they could be, super together, basically. And it does irritate me a bit. Because, like I said, Amber and Mark's chemistry is probably the best chemistry of anyone in this show. In terms of romantic chemistry. No other couple in this show has shown better connection than them. In writing Amber as a plot device character in order to just push Mark forward towards Eve, they kind of accidentally made this relationship perfect. Honestly, it's better than a lot of the relationships I see in other shows, too. It's a fucking amazing relationship. And they're choosing to end it because they want him to end up with Eve. Which is not really something I like. I don't like it when characters are reduced to just these plot devices to push something else forward. This was one of my main gripes by the end of Star vs. the Force of Evil, because it felt like they did that with every other character that both Star and Marco showed romantic interest in, and also had a shit ton of more chemistry with than each other. But they forced Marco and Star to end up together because main male and main female character. And it feels like they're doing the same thing here with Mark and Eve. It's like, at least in the first season, Eve was kind of billed as like the main female hero. And although she has a much smaller role in this season, like she had a special in between seasons. She's still basically the main female character, even if her screen time has been reduced. It's gonna pick up again. But it feels like that's why they're putting them together. Just because of that. Even though it doesn't make sense. Because they come across as siblings more than romantic interests. Like, they act like brother and sister towards each other. They don't have romantic chemistry at all. So it's just another case of, like, a forced romance just because she's a superhero as well and can handle things better. And again, to me, it makes Amber seem like a plot device and less of her own actual character. And I don't like that. Again, if you see it differently, that's fine. It's all subjective. You're allowed your own opinions. But I'm allowed mine. And I'm allowed to say that I don't like the way this was handled. Now, another issue I mentioned as having was the Viltrumite stuff. That was probably one of my biggest, if not my biggest issue. And that does come to play in here as well, because Anissa comes, threatens Amber, and has this conversation leading into the fight with Mark. She tries to reason with him, saying that under Viltrumite rule, Earth will be saved and protected. They'll be able to stop capitalism from, cannibalizing humanity. And they'll be able to protect more lives than they would take. The problem with this argument from a viewer perspective is that we know this is bullshit because we've literally seen what will happen under Viltrumite rule. The problem with making this argument is that, like, I feel like this is trying to divide the fans. Like, the writers are trying to, like, divide the fans by saying, like, oh, which side will you pick? Do you think Mark was in the wrong for being stubborn and denying her instead of just telling her what she wanted to hear? Do you think Anissa was in the wrong? What do you think is the truth here? There's only one truth here. Anissa was in the wrong. Because, again, the literal beginning of the season showed what Earth would be under Viltrumite rule. It's a hellscape. It is a post-apocalyptic hellscape. And you can argue all you want about, oh, but that's because there was this resistance and they were fighting back and everything. But it's like, that's going to happen no matter what. It's like, yeah, there was a resistance. There will always be a resistance. That's how humanity works. That hellscape is going to happen no matter what if Viltrumite rule happens. No matter if it's initially by Mark and Nolan, or whether it's an invading force afterwards. That doesn't matter. Anissa was in the wrong, and so was Cecil. Cecil telling Mark to just tell her what she wants to hear, and so they could try and, you know, prepare to fight back once the Viltrumites come back. It's like, it's not going to work. Like, what do you think this is going to do? It's stupid. And also, it's just, you know, not correct, not right. Mark is a hero and he needs to stand for that, whether someone's watching or not. And that means if he's being given the choice of whether to, like, just continue to be a hero or to even just fake giving in, he's not going to even fake. He's not even going to pretend to give in, because that goes against being a hero in this scenario. Mark was 100% in the right here. Like, Cecil's entire viewpoint is basically doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. And I don't agree with that. I don't morally or ethically agree with that. So, yeah. I truly believe that Mark was in the right there. Obviously, it's going to cause some problems down the line. But it would be better to go out fighting than to, you know, pretend to give in and then just basically be forced to give in later down the line. So, yeah. It makes no sense to me that that's kind of, it seems to be written as if there's, like, supposed to be, like, a division between the fandom. Because, in my eyes, at least, if you're siding with Cecil or Anissa here, you are just wrong. That is morally and ethically wrong. But yeah, it's just how I see it. But Anissa's arrival and everything is just continued expression of how I really feel like this Viltrumite stuff is being rushed into. It feels like it's way too early to keep going into this. To be bringing this stuff up now. And then at the very end of the episode, we, like, see Sterling K. Brown's character again. I have the credits up still. I could look that up real quick. Angstrom Levy. Yeah, the reason I have to keep looking up his name, because I keep forgetting it, because they're just ignoring him. He's he was billed to be the main villain of the season, and he's just not. He's just not. It's really disappointing. Like, he appears at the end of this, and it's like he's just barely in this season at all, and it's just... He's far more interesting than the Viltrumites, too. Like, I really wanted to see more of him, and we just really didn't get it. They refused to, like, do anything with him. And he just comes across as a wasted character. And with his connection to, like, you know, the alternate worlds where Mark and Nolan do team up, it's like it does have connection to where the story is right now. So it's like, I just feel like prioritizing the Viltrumites as the main villains of the season rather than him just feels wrong to me. It just feels like it doesn't quite work. Especially with, again, how the first episode set the season up. I would rather see more episodes with him than getting back to the Viltrumite stuff constantly. And then we have Immortal quitting because of his, you know, depression over losing Kate and everything. And he's, you know, as he even puts it, dangerous if he's not going to be at his mental and emotional best. We have a bunch of other stuff going on in the episode, and it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to just try to remember and deal with, so I'm probably forgetting some things. But yeah, this episode didn't really resolve much of my problems at all with what's been going on. It's like the problems are still there, and in some cases kind of worse because of how they're being presented and just not really, like, making a lot of sense to me. And again, I know it's all subjective, and if you're fine with how it's been handled in that regard, that's fine. But I'm also entitled to my opinion, and I'm entitled to view it the way I view it. And it's not even something I can help. It's not like it's something I can just change my thoughts on. This is genuinely how I feel when watching and after watching these episodes. It's just how my mind reacts to it. It's not, I can't just, like, change my viewpoint like that. It doesn't work that easily. And honestly, I don't want to, because this is what I just believe. So, why would I want to change that? I'm not a fan of where this is all gone. I feel like it's not become, like, really bad or anything. It's just gotten to a point where I've just lost a lot of interest. Like, there's a lot about the show I still love. There's a lot of things in this episode I loved. But there's just so much that has really bothered me. And I'm really afraid of what they're going to do with Angstrom in the last episode now. I'm really worried with how they've been, like, using or not using his character. He's going to end up having, like, 5 minutes of screen time, and then everything else is just going to focus on the Viltrumite stuff more. And it's just... I'm so disappointed. Because I was so excited for that stuff. Episode 1 was so exciting, so fun, so interesting. And all the best bits of it, they just do nothing with. Also, you want to notice something else they haven't done anything with since it first happened this season? The one guy who was with Debbie. and found out who she was, found out who her husband was. Nothing ever came of that. It was a complete waste of time. Unless something happens in the final episode, but it's like, why are we waiting until the final episode to bring that back? Why are we, like, dragging that out of all things? Like, I understand we see in this episode, like, Debbie is, like, maybe ready to start a new relationship. But it's like, I feel like she should have, like, gone through whatever was going on with that other relationship first, because they were, something was going on there initially. And we're just not tackling that at all. I'm confused by that choice. It's like, why is that something that you're just choosing to just ignore forever? Again, unless they do something with it this next episode, but even then, it's just weird timing for that. They're definitely setting up some stuff with D.A. Sinclair, because, like, Cecil mentioned something. I can't think of what it was, but he mentioned something that I guess Sinclair was working on for him, and he's like, how many of those are ready? And he's like, none. I forgot what he called them. But it's like, okay, so that's setting up something for the future. I'm not sure what's happening. I'm not sure what's going down in terms of a lot of things. And I just feel like I feel like there's a lot about this that I'm just not enjoying at the moment. Like I said before, though, obviously we're finishing the season. We're not leaving it off with, like, one more episode. But I'm really, really, like, questioning the idea of continuing into season 3. I know season 3 is, like, currently airing and whatnot. I would, whether or not I get to it, it's like it's not going to be right away. But it's like, I'm kind of questioning it just in general at this point. I mean, and the thing is, I never reacted to season 1 in the first place. I watched that on my own time. Maybe I'll continue to watch this on my own time. Maybe I'll watch through season 3 on my own. But I don't feel like at this moment, I don't feel like I want to put forth the effort into recording these reactions if I'm just not going to be enjoying the series that much. If I feel like I'm just, having these issues with the show that hurts my enjoyment of it, why do I want to put forth all this time and effort into recording these reactions? Feels kind of pointless, right? So we'll see how next episode goes, and I'm gonna make a decision, like, for sure, with by the end of the afterthoughts next time, because it's a case where I need to make a decision for sure, and move on from there. I just, there's a part of me that wants to give it another chance with season 3, but there's a part of me that I just don't want to put forth that effort at this point. It's like it's so much extra work that I could just be pushing myself past, and I'm not, again, I don't really have the motivation at this point to do it. So we'll see. We'll see how the final episode goes. I think I'm going to basically base it on that at this point. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm just, I'm not really impressed by this season. It's just not doing it for me. And maybe season 3 ends up being better. It's very possible. But unless the next episode really changes my view here, I'm probably going to end up watching season 3 on my own. But yeah. So sorry if I seem super negative. Again, it's not really something I can help. It's just my genuine, natural thoughts when watching this season. It's not something that I'm attempting to do. I'm not going into this trying to be negative. I'm really not. I'm just I'm not enjoying it and I'm finding a lot of issues. It's that simple. So, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Invincible? And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. So, see y'all next time.